L by U is the time it takes. It's just like, velocity is equal to distance traveled by time taken. That is convection. That is the simple process. That is what we have applied. But of course, there will be inaccuracies, there will be difference, but this is just an order of magnitude analysis. So the turbulent flow, it takes about 2 minutes, which is basically what we see. In general, what we see is about 2 minutes. When once you put the heater on in the room and let the air out at this 5 centimeter per second velocity, you will see that it in about 2 minutes you start feeling the effect of that heat in the other side of the room, the far corner of the room. So what we see is that this is just so that you understand that there is a whole lot of difference if the atmosphere were in fact had been laminar instead of turbulent. So basically computational fluid dynamics, whatever problem you deal with, there is no importance given to laminar flow. Nobody talks much about anything laminar. So whatever you have studied, like a plain Couette flow or Poiseuille flow or any of those things, none of them hold any ground in this computational fluid dynamics. It is not of any use here. Here we use some things completely different. So but basically you need to know what is proper fluid mechanics. Of course, laminar fluid mechanics to go into turbulence. The turbulence, we'll see as we go along what is turbulence and how is it modeled and all that. So this shows that turbulence is the main process by which the atmosphere and the oceans, everything in the region where we live operates. Mode of operation is turbulence. So life would not exist like today if not for a turbulent atmosphere like this. Okay, that is one thing. Then we can do a couple of some exercises we can do. For instance, in the previous case, in the turbulent case, let us assume that T is the time taken for mixing in turbulent case divided by time taken for mixing in the laminar case. It will become L by U divided by gamma by L squared. So this will be L by L gamma, no, sorry, what will it be? Gamma by LU. LU, okay. Gamma by LU. This is TT divided by TM, where TT is the turbulent, it is the time taken in a turbulent convection, whereas TM is the time taken in a molecular conduction. It's not convection, it's conduction. It will be gamma by LU. Now, basically this gamma is the diffusivity, and you won't be knowing it, but still I'll say that there is something known as nu by gamma. Nu is the kinematic viscosity. You should be knowing that. I think you would have done that in the laminar flow. That is where it comes mainly. Laminar kinematic viscosity, and this is the kinematic diffusivity. Kinematic diffusivity. The difference is that viscosity implies the transfer for velocity, whereas gamma diffusivity implies the transfer coefficient for anything else like temperature, tracers, some pollutants, anything like that. So diffusivity, gamma is the kinematic diffusivity. Now this nu by gamma is a number known as a Prandtl number. Prandtl number, gamma nu by gamma, where nu is the kinematic viscosity and gamma is the kinematic diffusivity. The ratio of these two is Prandtl number, and the ratio is very close to 1. It is about 0.7 or 0.8 or so in most of the cases. Okay, so this value is close to 1. So in some ways we can say that this value Tt divided by Tm is equal to gamma by L mu. I can replace it with nu by Lu. And UL by nu, this is nu, okay? This nu, which is kinematic viscosity. So nu by Lu. So UL by nu is Reynolds number. So we have this UL by nu here, this fellow. UL by nu is Reynolds number. So what we see is that TT divided by TM is equal to 1 by Reynolds number. So you see that the time rates, the time rate of diffusion between laminar and turbulent flows really depends upon the Reynolds number of the flow. So this is one particular, it is a fact. So it is one point you will see. That is why though you had, okay, in case you are not familiar, Reynolds number is equal to, it is usually defined as the inertial force. I haven't yet defined to you what is inertial force. I'll do that. Inertial force by viscous force. In fact, that's what, no, not next, but it is coming. So Reynolds number is equal to inertial force by viscous force. So you should know that in case, so this is basically the inertial force by viscous force is of these, the inertial force in the case of fluid flow, when a fluid is flowing, the inertial force is the force that tends to destabilize the fluid. So this fellow tries to destabilize the fluid. It is an inertial term, non-linear term, and you should know that whenever there are non-linear terms, they have a tendency to destabilize the solution. Like mathematics also, that is how it is. I think when you have non-linear terms, it tends to destabilize the, whether it is a differential equation or not. So you have right now inertial force, which this destabilizes the destabilizes the flow, destabilizes the flow, and this viscous force stabilizes the flow. Viscous force tries to stabilize the flow, stabilizing flow. So the viscous force tries to stabilize the flow, whereas the inertial force tries to destabilize the flow. So basically, it is the opposing effect of two forces. There is an inertial force, and when the destabilizing action is more, you will see that the Reynolds number is more, and when the Reynolds number is more, you see that it has a tendency to become turbulent. So that is why we say that as the Reynolds number increases, the flow turns into turbulence. Reason being that the inertial force becomes more and more, the destabilizing force becomes more and more, and the viscous force tends to decrease. Anyway, we are coming into all that later. Now we have, let us take a look at this. Now we talk about we will talk about something which you are not most likely heard of, something known as eddy diffusivity. Now, till now, you must have heard of what is known as kinematic viscosity, kinematic diffusivity, etc. But you wouldn't have come across what is meant by an eddy viscosity or an eddy diffusivity. This also is a part, eddy viscosity is also part of the same thing. Now, what they say is that like this, let us assume. Now, I did tell you that turbulence is a convection phenomenon. That is, uh, what happens is that because of convection, there is more mixing and there is more diffusion because the air itself is moving. So one way of thinking at that time, what the first line of thinking was that suppose you have this diffusion equation like this itself. Now this is the diffusion equation, okay, and you have a coefficient there. You used to have a coefficient known as gamma here, and we say that this diffusion is like this. So what they said is that let us assume that when there is turbulence, when there is a intense mixing and flow, let us have a diffusivity. This is known as the kinematic diffusivity. So let us suppose that we have a diffusivity K, which is very many higher orders of magnitude greater than this gamma. But so what we assume is that the process so we assume that the diffusion equation is the same. It means that it is still diffusing, but with a higher diffusivity. So the diffusivity becomes K. Diffusivity is K. Okay. So this large diffusivity, in fact, takes into account for the larger transfer of momentum or temperature. And this is generally what they call as eddy diffusivity. Now, how in the world can you get an expression for an eddy diffusivity? So the best thing they thought was, so let us do this. So by taking an order of magnitude, it again becomes theta by T equals K into theta by L squared. So removing the theta, K is of the order of L square by T. Okay. Now, this is turbulent motion. Okay. We already saw that the turbulent motion is given by T is equal to L square by, so here T is equal to L square by K. And from our previous definition, from the previous part, we saw that T is equal to, what did we get? T is equal to L by U. Yes. L by T is equal to L by U. This is how we said it was for the turbulent motion. Now, if we assume these two to be similar, these two to be identical, then we get L square by K equals L by U. So one L cancels. So you get K equals UL. So if L is the length scale of the flow, okay, in our case, the length of the room, and K and U is the velocity with which the flow is occurring, we can say that there is an eddy diffusivity for the flow, eddy diffusivity for the flow in that room to be of the value of UL, K of the order of UL. That is known as eddy diffusivity. So this K is known as eddy diffusivity. This one. Eddy diffusivity. So this is the first expression that was derived for K. These are all very long back. Okay, this is like probably in 1850 or around that time. So K is equal to UL, eddy diffusivity. K is equal to UL is the first derivation that was given, and K by gamma. K by gamma, eddy diffusivity to the molecular diffusivity is of the order of K by nu. Is of, again, K is of the order of UL by nu is equal to Reynolds number. Again, we get an expression for, so the ratio of the eddy diffusivity to the molecular diffusivity is of the order of Reynolds number. Another property that we have seen, these are all order of magnitude only, the values won't come correctly, exactly same, values won't come correct, exactly same, but order of magnitude you will get values. For a long time, the study of actually even now, for instance, the value of the turbulence, the study of turbulence doesn't involve very accurate values. Of course, there are some probes and all now which can measure the fluctuating velocity with a very high degree of accuracy, but still it's not very, still the variation, the prediction, modeling part, or the, basically that is what we mean by modeling part. Modeling part means numerical simulation part. That still is not, it doesn't give that kind of accurate values for the fluctuating component of velocity, the varying part of velocity. So we still have ambiguity there. At this time, there was nothing to describe it. They didn't even know what was a random variation of so much. The only relation they had was with the kinetic theory of gases, that they had seen the random variation of molecules, random motion of molecules. So the only thing they parallel to this was that. So we had K, so we get K by gamma. The eddy diffusivity to the molecular diffusivity is Reynolds number, is basically something of the order of the current Reynolds number. Okay. Now there is another type of similar exercise that you could carry out. Just a minute. Yeah. Okay. Now, just like we talked about a problem a with an imposed length scale, we talked about a problem with an imposed length scale. Now you could also have a problem with a imposed time scale. Same thing, problem with an imposed time scale. What it means is that one of the major features of the flow that occurs, or the major factor in that laboratory which you have where you are doing the experiment, is that laboratory's time scale is somehow fixed. The laboratory's time scale is somehow fixed. The best and the simplest example of this, where you have a laboratory's length scale time scale as fixed, is basically Earth itself. Earth rotates in its own axis. So all the fluids and all the atmosphere, whatever is there in the atmosphere and in the oceans, these things all rotate, and they are all imposed by a time scale of the order of Earth's rotation. Earth's rotation is given by F, is usually given by a term F is equal to its angular velocity is given by F. It's about 10 raised to minus 4 seconds per second, 10 raised to minus 4 per second. This is the frequency. This is the frequency with which it rotates. This is the angular velocity with which it rotates, not frequency. I think it's the angular velocity with which it rotates. And this value is usually known as a Coriolis parameter. So Coriolis parameter is roughly representing the angular velocity of Earth. And this Coriolis parameter shows that it is imposed on Earth, which means everything that occurs on Earth, all the processes that occur on Earth, natural movement of all the air, water, etc., will all try to be compressed into this time scale. So it tries to follow this time scale to the maximum extent that it can. It doesn't follow it perfectly, but this thing is superimposed. It's like saying that the room is fixed and now everything tries to adjust itself to the dimension of the room. Just like that, in this case, the time scale is fixed. The time is kind of fixed and everything tries to adjust itself to the time scale of Earth's rotation. So once you have that, you have, just like the last time, the same equation, turbulence, the equation we will have same thing, Lm square is equal to nu into t. This is the same equation, that is dou theta by dou t is equal to nu, actually it was gamma dou theta, dou square theta by dou xj. Now this gamma is replaced by nu because we say that the Prandtl number is of the order of 1. So Lm square is of the order of nu t. Okay, you get it like this. Now, in this case, the length is what we need to find out. The time scale is fixed. Time scale is 1 by 10 raised to minus 4. So it's about 10 raised to 4. So now with this, nu for air, we are considering air here, okay, not the ocean. So when we consider air, nu is equal to 0.15 centimeter square per second. Okay, nu is this. And time scale is equal to 1 by f. This is the angular velocity, so 1 by f will give you the time scale. So this is equal to again there is some 2 pi and all that, but remember that these are all order of magnitude analysis. So 10 raised to 4 seconds, and this gives Lm, which is equal to this into this, as about 40 centimeter. Now, what this says is that if the Earth is completely laminar, means everything around the Earth is completely laminar, the air were laminar, the air flows were laminar, the ocean's flows is laminar, whatever happens in the laboratory is laminar, everything is laminar. If you have that, then you will have a mode of operation or a region of operation of Earth for about as it says, for about a distance of 40 meters. For about a distance of 40 meters, which means that, which is something like saying that the boundary layer of Earth would be, the boundary layer of Earth would be about 40 centimeters, not 40 meters, sorry, 40 centimeters. That is the size of a 40 centimeters is how much? Probably the size of my hand or the finger completely. So that is about 40 centimeters long. So that will be the size. That is not true. Obviously, we know that everything happens up to an order of, the fact is the boundary layer of Earth is about an order of about 1,000 meters, about 1 kilometer. So up to what happens is that up to 1 kilometer, we have the boundary layer of Earth. And beyond that, there is other layers like stratosphere, troposphere, etc. Different layers where basically the amount of mixing and all becomes very less. It's very laminar in those regions. Space is very laminar. There is no turbulence in space. So, but there is turbulence in space, but mainly it's laminar. So this region from the Earth's surface to the particular height of about 100 meters, which is basically the boundary layer of Earth, is that 1 kilometer. This is basically turbulent because it has to be. If it were laminar, the boundary layer would be about 40 centimeters long, 40 centimeters high, which is not true. Which is it should. Now let us see what it will be if it is about if it is turbulent. Let us see what the boundary layer height would be if it were turbulent. There you will get L in the case of the laminar. If the boundary layer is turbulent, L in that case is equal to again nu T. In the case of turbulent flow, it's flow. So L is equal to U into T. U is generally the velocity of wind. We can the turbulent velocity of wind. The turbulent component is about 0.3 meter per second into time. Time is F 1 by F, which is 10 raised to 4 seconds. 10 raised to 4 seconds. This gives you about 3 into 10 raised to 3 meter, which is about 3000 meters, which is of odd. So that means that all the processes, mainly what we mean by inhabitable Earth, inhabitable space of Earth, in space in the Earth is basically about 3000 meters high, which is particularly true. It goes from about 1000 meters or about 500 meters to something like 3000, 4000, sometimes 4000 to 4500 meters. It goes the boundary layer of height, boundary layer of Earth, that height goes down, varies between these two. So what we see is that the Earth's surface is mainly turbulent. Okay, the Earth's surface is predominantly turbulent. Otherwise, we'll have only 40 centimeter long height, which means that after that everything will be laminar. You cannot move. Everything is very slow. The fluid stops moving. In fact, fluids will start moving very slowly. The whole thing would be impossible. Life would be impossible. So we say that turbulence is quite an important problem. So when we study the computational fluid dynamics, even whatever you are studying in the laboratory, basically it's all turbulent. The concept of laminar flow is gone. There is nothing more to do with, for you also, there is nothing more to do with laminar flows. That part is gone. Now it's all about turbulent flows. Okay. So let us go into that. So that is what we are going into, the turbulence. A little bit we'll go into turbulence, and then basically what we'll do is the second half we'll try to do the discretization of these equations. First we'll derive the turbulent fluid dynamics equations, computational fluid dynamics equations, basically something very popularly known as the RANS equation, Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equation. So first, we haven't even seen what is Navier-Stokes equation. We have to go into that. Okay, so let us go into that. So this is basically one part. Now let's go into Navier-Stokes equations and now basically the general equation of motion of fluids is known as the momentum equation. Okay, before that, probably I should also mention. Before this, there is something known as more basic than this, is something known as a continuity equation. continuity equation. The continuity equation, as you would have studied it, is perhaps that area into velocity is a constant, okay, which is basically stating that it's a conservation of volume, or if the density is constant, it's a conservation of mass or conservation of volume. That is what the continuity equation is. It is true. It is a conservation of mass equation, because there is a rho also here. Conservation of mass equation. It is a conservation of mass equation. Now the conservation of mass equation is usually written for our purposes, means for this course purposes and for fluid in basically in CFD and all. Nobody writes it like this. Nobody writes rho uv equal to constant. This is equal to constant. This is not written. We usually write it in the differential form. The differential form of moment of continuity equation is, I am not going to derive it. You can just take it from any book. For incompressible flows, I am talking only about incompressible flows. From now on also, all the derivations, all the equations that I am deriving are for incompressible flows. Incompressible flows means there is no rapid change of density, which means that the flows, it basically we are talking about ordinary flows occurring in the ocean, etc. When you put flows with artificially produced electromagnetic fields and flows with extremely high compressibility due to supersonic things, those kind of things are all those you forget, that we are not going into any of those. These are just simple flows in the ocean, simple flows in the rivers or canals, the simple flows which is basically associated with ships, the flow around the ships, or you can even say that it's the simple flows around in a meteorological setting or in a oceanographic setting. So basically all these flows, all these three types of flows only we are dealing with. They are known as incompressible flows. We have only flows with no rapidly changing density. So we have dou u by dou x. You just remember this. Please remember this equation. Dou v by dou y plus dou w by dou z equal to 0. This is the simplest form of the continuity equation in the differential form. So this is the differential form of the continuity equation. This you have to remember. It definitely you have to remember this equation. And then okay. Now there is, after you finish with the continuity equation, then we go into what is known as the momentum equation. The momentum equation is also known as the Navier-Stokes equation. Navier-Stokes equation. This is an equation which all those who are planning to do CFD in their life should bother about. They should bother about this, as a Navier-Stokes equation is something they'll be dealing with all their lives if they are planning to follow this career path. So the basic equation, I'll before that probably I should define one more thing. Now there is something known as Einstein's summation rule. Now we are dealing with this course actually it's taken from a graduate level course. So basically all the things are a little of a higher level, and it's not general, very simple turbulence that you see in some of the very basic textbooks. So it goes a little more advanced. So we deal with something known as tensors. There is something known as tensors. I'm not sure if you have done mathematics. In that mathematics you had tensors or not, but tensors is a thing like a vector. For example, you will have like this. We say the velocity is ui. So the velocity components are ui, uj, and uk. Now it is written in many forms. They say it is ui. It can be said that it is ui where I equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, it can be told like this. This is one way to write it. Ui where I equals 1, 2, 3. Or we can write it as ui, uj, uk, three terms. Now there is a rule. There is a rule that says that in summations rule that proof and all I'm not going to. So you will have that. Suppose you have a term which is like this: ui something like this, one term. So you had a term, some equation I'm writing, in which you got a term called ui plus a term like this. This is not just ui squared. This is actually very carefully you have to do this. In a product, okay, in a product, if you get the same index repeated, ui, the same index repeated, this is actually u1 square plus u2 square plus u3 square, means ui square plus u. When I write ui, you might get confused. That's why I didn't write that. But let us just put it as u square plus v square plus w square. When you have these two things repeated, but if you had ui plus ui, this is not a product. Okay, here it is just ui plus ui. It means maybe u1 plus u1, most like u1 plus u1. There is no product there. But if it is ui into ui, it is not u1 into u1, but it is u1 into u1 plus u2 into u2 plus u3 into u3. This comes only for a product. No, not for anything else. Product or division. For product or division, this comes up. For addition, subtraction, this doesn't come up. This is known as Einstein's summation rule for tensors. This you keep it in mind. So actually one interesting thing you will see is that you see this equation. This is known as the continuity equation. Basically that is dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y plus dou w by dou z equal to 0, which can also be written as this we need. So I'll remove this. So now here we have dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y plus dou w by dou z equal to 0. Let me write it in a slightly different format as dou, it will be written as dou u1 by dou x1 plus dou u2 by dou x2 plus dou u3 by dou x3 equal to 0. Let me write it in this format, dou u1. So this is basically can be written as dou ui by dou xi equal to 0. Now this dou ui by dou xi equal to 0 does not mean dou u1 by dou x1 equal to 0. Dou ui by dou xi equal to 0 means dou u1 by dou x1 plus dou u2 by dou x2 plus dou u3 by dou x3 equal to 0. This summation rule comes up. So now you see that this thing, what an advantage it is to have something called as tensors compression. You know, this tensorial compression is such a useful thing. You are writing such a long equation as just one term, and it doesn't have to be like when you can have, when you will see when you go into the momentum equation, such long terms will be there. All this can be simplified very quickly by means of this tensorial compression. So this tensorial notation, this thing which I said, Einstein summation rule, will help you reduce the complexity of the long equations you are writing. So it can just be written as dou ui by. So this is what you have to be careful about. For this course, at least be careful. See that when you have a tensor in which if you have a product or division with index same, like if I write dou ui by dou xj equal to 0, this doesn't mean any summation. There is no summation there. I is a different thing, j is a different thing, no summation. But dou ui by dou xi implies dou u1 by dou x1 plus dou u2 by dou x2 plus dou u3 by dou x3 equal to 0, which is basically the continuity equation. So this, you will see that this is how the continuity equation is written in little advanced textbooks. You won't see any. You might think, then why is it dou u I by dou xi equal to 0 will mean dou u1 by dou x1 is 0. It's not that. It is dou u1 by dou x1 plus dou u2 by dou x2 plus dou u3 by dou x3 equal to 0. So that you have to be careful. This is the Einstein summation rule. Okay. Now with that background, you should be able to do this. We will come to the Navier-Stokes equation. So we come to the Navier-Stokes equation. I am going to write it first. Now, what does this equation? You have to be very careful when you are writing this equation. Now, this equation is the Navier-Stokes equation, basically. Now, this is an equation actually for all the three directions. There are, you should know that Navier-Stokes equation are there are three Navier-Stokes equations. They are for the different directions of I, J, and K. I equals X, Y, J equals Y, and K equals Z. So for X, Y, and Z, you will have the Navier-Stokes equations, three different equations. So dou UI by dou T. So this is an equation. You look at the numerator, okay? This is a equation which seems to have as its numerator UI, UI, and UI. So this is basically an equation for X momentum. Equation for X momentum, or the momentum equation in the X direction. This is the momentum equation in the X direction. So, or the equation for X momentum. So basically, now let us look at the other term. So do UI, so this is an equation for UI. If you had uj, it is a different thing. If you had for uk, it's a different thing. So this is for ui. So these terms will be ui in that case. Now I come to the second term, this one, uj dou ui by dou xj. You see this j, actually when you have a summation, that they are known as dummy indices. The index j, why it's called dummy index is because of this. It's like this, like this is really the fact. The fact is that dou ui by dou xi is equal to dou uj by y, because all of them are the same thing. All of them are basically dou u1 by dou x1 plus dou u2 by dou x2 plus dou u3 by dou x3. So it does not matter what you put in here, whether it is I, but both should be the same, of course. Once both are same, then it doesn't matter what you put there. It can be I, j, k. It is a summation. So because of that, these are called dummy indices. So just like that, this uj dou ui by dou xj is a dummy index. I'll explain what this equation is. Then you have a pressure gradient term and a viscosity term. This also has xj, xj. So what is this equation? The first term is dou ui by dou t. So this represents this is known as a local derivative. This is a local derivative. A local derivative is basically just an unsteady term. That is what we also call it as unsteady term. It is a local derivative or it's an unsteady term. It is known as that is known as the unsteady part of the Navier-Stokes equation. So dou ui by dou x, and it is ui. When by looking at ui, you can say that the equation is for x momentum. This is an x momentum equation. That is the first term. Then we have the next term. Let's take a look at the next term. It is uj dou ui by dou xj. Now this is equal to, as I have told you, these j and j are dummy indices, but I is not a part of that. I'll tell you how this is expanded. Then it should be clear to you. This thing is a little confusing. I don't know how many of you are getting confused or how many of you are really following it, but usually in the class I see at least half the class get confused and the other half they figure it out pretty fast. So u1 dou ui by dou x1 plus u2 dou ui by dou x2 plus u3 dou ui by dou x3. So what it means is that this ui is not compromised in any way. It is always ui. This is ui. So this is an equation for ui actually. Means it is an equation for ui component of I component of the velocity. This is an equation for the I component of velocity, which implies that it is a x momentum equation. So this is an x momentum equation, but this is a dummy variable. This comes like this: u1 dou ui by dou x1 plus u2 dou ui by dou x2 plus u3 dou ui by dou x3. So this is the basically the this is known as the non-linear term. Why is it called so? It is just simple reason is that it is non-linear. There is a one u here, one u here. It is a product of it is a product of velocities, and therefore it is a non-linear term. So non-linear term in the now this term basically this term, okay, is basically the dangerous part of the Navier-Stokes equation. This is the term that produces the turbulence. So you remember when you wrote the Reynolds number, we said that it was inertial term by viscous term. We said it was an inertial term by a viscous term. Now of that, the inertial term is this uj dou ui by dou xj. In the tensorial form, of course, it is uj dou ui by dou xj. That is this inertial term. Viscous term we are coming into. We will come to later. For the time being, this is the inertial term. So this is the term that causes the flow to transition into turbulence. And why it does that and what it does, we'll come to later. But this is basically the unstable part of the Navier-Stokes equation. This is the term that produces turbulence, non-linear term. The non-linear term is the term that produces turbulence. Okay. Then let us go further. This you have understood. Local derivative is over. The non-linear term is over. Now the right-hand side. Basically, you should know that this equation is just F equals ma. Okay. The left-hand side represents ma. This is ma. There is no m because in a fluid, we never talk about m. We talk about density. We never talk about the volume. Everything is talked about in a per unit volume. So in case of a fluid, there is no point anyway, right? Talking about the volume, volume can be anything or mass can be anything. The fluid, it doesn't make any sense. So basically for a fluid, we usually talk about per unit volume of the fluid. So it becomes rho. So as you can see, there is a rho here. Oh, I adopted it. Anyway, let's I'll write it again. So basically, this is the Navier-Stokes equation. Navier-Stokes equation, in which we see that, and let me write it again. Unsteady term plus uj dou ui by dou xj equals minus 1 by rho dou p by dou xi plus nu dou square ui by dou xj. This is the Navier-Stokes equation. So this is the unsteady term or the unsteady term, or it is known as the local derivative, and this is known as the non-linear term, or it is known as the inertial term, non-linear term or inertial term. And then this basically is the pressure gradient term. Pressure gradient term is there's nothing much to describe in it. This implies dou p by dou x. Dou p. So this you have to be careful. When you have I here, you have I here. Okay, this is I. So dou p by dou xi plus. So this is the pressure gradient term. Nothing more to talk about in that. That is pressure gradient term. And then we finally come to the last term, which is the viscous term. This is the viscous term. So this is equal to nu dou square ui by dou xj means what? It is equal to dou square ui by dou x1 plus nu dou square ui by dou x2 plus nu dou square ui by dou x3 dou x3. If you look at the very basic, very simple type of equations, some books are there, the basic, which talks about basic fluid mechanics. In those books, if you look at the equation, you will see this written as basically you will see it written as nu into dou square u by dou x squared plus dou square u by dou y squared plus dou square u by dou z squared. All these, it will be written like this. So there is no difference. That is what we are trying to show here. Nu into dou square ui by dou x1 x dou x1 nu into dou square. But this, remember, this is ui always. This is ui. This is ui. Because we are talking about the x component of velocity. The x component of momentum or x component of velocity will imply always ui like this, and this is the nonlinear. So basically your Reynolds number becomes uj dou ui by dou xj divided by nu dou square ui by dou xj dou xj. This is basically your Reynolds number. Now, order of magnitude, if you write uj is of the order of magnitude of u. This is of the order of magnitude of u by L divided by nu u by L squared, which is this L will go to the top, u by L nu. Nu L u by nu L. Or did I make a mistake? This L will go to the top now. I think I made a mistake. Yeah. L will go to the top. One L will go to the top. Sorry. So UL by nu. This L will go to the top. U L by nu. I think it's okay. Yeah, it's like this. So UL by nu. So it will become the Reynolds number. So this is how they derived the Reynolds number in the first place. And this comes from this particular part. This known as the inertial force by viscous force. So inertial force by viscous force, the order of magnitude of that is known as UL by nu, is known as the. Now we come to some important thing which is slightly difficult to understand, or also probably, or maybe you'll follow it. So basically, this is the simplest and the first, the basic form of basic terms of the Navier-Stokes equation. Basic definition of Navier-Stokes equation is what I just gave. So of that, you saw that there is a inertial term to viscous term ratio, which we called as Reynolds number, which is equal to what was it? U square by L, no? U square by L divided by nu u by L squared. Yeah, this is how it came. This was the order of magnitude. Now you can see one interesting thing here. So let us suppose that the Reynolds number keeps on increasing. When the Reynolds number keeps on increasing, you will see that the viscous term keeps on decreasing. This term keeps on decreasing, and it becomes, and in the limit, the Reynolds number tends to infinity. The viscous force becomes zero. It seems to become zero. Now, if that is not really true, because if that is true, for example, I'll tell you an example. There is a region when there is a surface. Now, when there is a surface like this and there is flow over the surface, usually it will be like this. Okay, when there is flow over the surface, there will be a gradient. There will be a gradient, and because of this, there is one condition, that is at the surface, because of the viscosity, the tangential velocity will be zero. U equal to zero at y equal to zero. This is y. So u equal to 0 at y equal to 0 is a very important condition, and this is actually known as the no slip boundary condition. Is known as a no slip boundary condition. no slip boundary condition. Now this condition has to be satisfied. Now suppose I keep on increasing the Reynolds number. As you see here, as the Reynolds number keeps on increasing, the viscosity becomes very negligible. So does that mean that it becomes slipping? That is, does that mean that the no slip boundary condition is no longer satisfied? No, it does not mean that, because the thing is that the no slip boundary condition does not, no slip boundary condition always has to be satisfied. It is a property, because every object offers friction, and removal of friction and all is not in our hands. It's too intrinsic a property of the fluid, so, and the solid. So you have the flow becomes zero here. So what is the way in which this can happen? Now you are seeing this is a viscous term. Now viscous term becomes, you are saying that the viscous term is becoming smaller and smaller. Now what is a way to increase the viscous term, this term? When the flow keeps on increasing in Reynolds number, let's say the speed of the flow is keeping on increasing. You're keeping on increasing the Reynolds number, and somehow it reaches a state when the viscous force is becoming very small. So what happens is that this L will start changing. L will break down, means L will become smaller and smaller. So what will happen is that L will keep on decreasing smaller and smaller, such that this thing becomes nu U by some other L squared. I'll explain what I'm talking about here, because this is one of the core features of turbulence. Nu U by L square. This L is so small, L becomes very small, and as the Reynolds number keeps on increasing, the L keeps on decreasing, and as a result, this value for viscosity becomes larger and larger. U increases, but L decreases. And as a result, the viscous force becomes very large. Viscous force becomes dominant. Okay. Actually, I got a phone. Just give me a minute. Sorry. Just give me a minute, okay? Sorry, that was a disturbance. What was I following? Forgot what I was teaching here. Okay. So basically the Reynolds number, I mean the L, the length scale of the flow keeps on decreasing. So what really happens is that if you have the length scale of the flow as very large, let's say like this, it decreases to a smaller value. And then as the Reynolds number keeps on, it then decreases to an even smaller value. It decreases to an even smaller value, and it keeps on decreasing to a smaller value. So basically what happens is that when you have a complete big flow going across like this, it starts breaking into flows of smaller length scales. Smaller length scales will look like small eddies. Okay, so smaller eddies start being generated, and like this, it generally keeps becoming smaller, and the eddy size, it just falls into such a value. It becomes so small that it finally, at the smallest level, it dissipates as heat. Okay, so that energy, turbulent energy, dissipates as heat. So basically you have a flow which is composed of eddies of different sizes intermingling with each other, and this is known as turbulence. This is what the flow is when the flow is turbulent. This is a turbulent flow. So this is what happens. You have multiple length scales. So multiple length scales occur because of this reason. The Reynolds number keeps on increasing, and viscosity cannot become zero because the no slip boundary condition has to be satisfied, and as a result you get these eddies of different sizes, different length scales, and then it produces turbulence. Okay, this is turbulence. And this you can say that it so we can say that this large, so it's like this. There is a large eddy. Large eddy. First, the large eddy is of the size of the mean flow. Then it breaks down into smaller eddies of smaller sizes. This breaks down into smaller, even smaller eddies. Like this, and finally it reaches some state when it dissipates as heat. The energy is dissipated as heat. So at this level, you have below a particular level, there is no turbulence. So turbulence has an upper level and a lower level between which there is turbulence. Velocity, upper level means upper level of velocity and a lower level of velocity. Beyond that, there is no turbulence. So you will have length scale. So this is the heat. Heat is produced, and this process is known as energy cascade. This is known as energy cascade, and it is also known as Richardson's energy cascade in honor of the person who found this out or who proposed this. Richardson's energy cascade. Richardson's energy cascade in the honor of the person who found this out. Then, of course, there is a small thing here which you might some things. Suppose there is a flat plate. We are dealing with a lot of flat plates. Okay, in not only in naval architecture, aerospace, everything deals with a lot with a flat plate. So when you have a flat plate, flow over a flat plate, we usually say there is a term which is usually true that we assume we say that this longitudinal flow, longitudinal direction of movement is known as convection. Okay, it is slightly not exactly a mechanical engineering term. They don't use it so much, but we use it many places. This is known as a convection. This process, this region, this movement is known as convection, and this movement in this direction, the transverse direction, which we call, is known as diffusion. So you will have, so diffusive length scale is much less than the convective length scale. The diffusive length scale is of the order of the boundary layer thickness. Boundary layer thickness. The diffusive layer is of the order of the boundary layer thickness, whereas the convective layer is of the order of this thing itself, of the size of the object itself. So this is one thing. We have covered some portion today. Now what we do, I will need to do one more thing. Now what you see here is you see here actually a cascade of energy. Energy cascades from a large scale to a smaller scale, etc. And it finally dissipates at heat. This, the rate at which the smallest eddies dissipate as heat is usually given a term. It is written as epsilon, which is the dissipation rate. Dissipation rate. This is a term used in many things. I don't know if you are familiar with CFD, but you might have heard, if you have heard about K epsilon model and all that. It is a kind of model which is used for turbulence. Anyway, that epsilon is this. Epsilon is the dissipation rate. It is the rate at which energy is dissipated by the smaller scale eddies. So this dissipation rate is epsilon. And how will you get, again, order of magnitude analysis for epsilon? Epsilon depends upon the, now what happens is this. Okay, all the energy dissipation rate here comes from the larger eddy. Larger eddy transfers to the smaller eddy, to the smaller further till heat. So there is no heat lost anywhere. There is no energy lost anywhere. The energy that is transferred from the largest eddy to the next size eddy will be equal to the dissipation rate itself. So if the rate of transfer, let us assume that u is the velocity scale of the largest eddy, then the kinetic energy of the largest eddy is of the order of magnitude u square. Kinetic energy, okay, kinetic energy is u squared, and u square, and the time scale of the largest eddy is L by u. This is the time scale, and the dissipation rate is equal to the energy per unit time, which is basically u square by L by u. It is equal to u cube by L. This I think you should by heart and remember forever. It is the simplest form, the simplest. This is very order of magnitude analysis. This is not at all true when you are doing high-fi synthesis, but as I told you in the last class itself, turbulence field is going to be a little vague. Okay, it's not going to be like the other subjects that you have studied mostly so far, like the hydrostatics and stability, or resistance and propulsion or something, where you have deterministic, very clear-cut answers. This is all order of magnitude. So you have to get that vague form of thinking. You have to, you have to get used to that vague form of thinking. So this is u square. U square is the kinetic energy of the large eddy, and the rate of transfer, that or the time scale. It is the way in which, that is dissipation rate. The dissipation rate means the rate at which energy is transferred from the larger scale to the smaller scale. The rate at which energy is transferred from the larger scale to the smaller scale would depend upon the energy of the larger scale, and it would also depend upon the time for which, time scale of the larger eddy. What is meant by time scale of a larger eddy? Time scale of a larger eddy means the time for which the large eddy exists. So, divided by that will give you the rate of um, dissipation of this eddy. So this rate of dissipation is usually given by u cube by L, where u is the velocity of the largest eddies, or general velocity scale is L. L is the size of the largest eddies, and this is u cube by L. Actually, these things I am coming into a little more detail. Today is just an introduction, not an introduction, but still it's not as detailed as I would like to when I go further into it. Now, I'll do one more thing and then stop. Okay. Now, we did say that there is a large eddy. We did say that there is a large eddy, and this large eddy goes down further and further into a smallest eddy, which dissipates itself as heat. Now, the smallest eddy just before it dissipates as heat is known as the Kolmogorov size eddy. Kolmogorov eddy or Kolmogorov size eddy. This is in honor of the person who worked on this field a lot. It is Kolmogorov, Russian scientist. So this is known as a Kolmogorov eddy. Okay, the smallest eddy just before the size. Now the Kolmogorov, why he became so famous is because, as I told you, the whole thing is vague. You must be feeling it by now. It is kind of vague. How do you get some idea about what is going on? Like this process, what is happening? So what he said was that the Kolmogorov eddy, the smallest eddy must be, let us assume that its size is eta. Okay, let us assume its size is eta. Now he said, I think that the size of eta, the smallest size, must be depending upon a couple of factors. The main factors that a small eddy is influenced by are: one, the dissipation rate, the rate at which it is dissipated; two, it is affected by the viscosity, and that's all. So the dissipation rate and viscosity. The size of the largest size eddy, I don't think it will matter for the smallest eddy. Similarly, the time scale of the largest eddy does not matter for the smallest eddy. Large eddy and small eddies seem to be they are not directly dependent upon each other. This process is independent of the other process, and the only thing in which the size of the eddy must be depending is epsilon and nu. Nu obviously, because it's the viscous process occurring there. because it's viscosity occurring there. So it must be depending upon nu of the fluid. That is reasonable to understand. Then the other one is dissipation, rate of dissipation. The rate of dissipation is another thing which basically the smaller eddies must be depending upon, because that is the main process that is happening to them. They dissipate into heat, which is epsilon. So he said that now this thing is very, it's very vague. I am sure you must also be thinking, how can you clearly say that? Now, after all these years, in the last, turbulence has really matured into a very good field, basically only in the last 20 years. Okay, and that's when all these concepts of all these vague concepts got established by experiments. Now experiments have fully established these things, and this is true. Eta really depends upon epsilon and nu. That is why Kolmogorov became famous. So whatever he proposed, by experiments have proved that it is true. So it is. So he became famous, and it's called the Kolmogorov eddy. So eta, he said, depending upon epsilon and nu. Now he also proceeded further to say that in case this eta is depending upon epsilon, and said, how will you get a relationship for eta? He did the simplest thing he could think of, that is a dimensional analysis. Dimensional analysis. So eta is equal to, it depends upon epsilon and nu. So how do you do a dimensional analysis? I usually make the students do it in the class, but now I don't think I can tell you how from here. So basically epsilon is basically u cubed by L, I told you. So what is its unit? Its unit is meter per second cubed divided by meter, which is meter square per second cube. Okay, so this has it depends on meter square per second cube, and nu is how is nu? Nu is the kinematic viscosity. What is its unit? I will usually try some tricks to remember it. We know that Reynolds number is equal to UL by nu is not a dimension is there. So nu must be UL. Okay. So UL is meter per second into meter. So it must be meter square per second, meter square per second. So he said that eta is dependent upon this epsilon and nu, then it should be like this. Eta can be written as, dimensional analysis, don't you? You should be knowing it. I should not be teaching you dimensional analysis now, because it's something you would have done already. So eta is equal to epsilon a when you raised to b, and this comes to something like this. If you do it, you will see that you will get eta to be nu cube by epsilon to the power 1 by 4. You'll get like this. Okay, so this is correct. So by just dimensional analysis, you got a very correct derivation, which is basically the why he is remembered as a great scientist. So nu cube by epsilon raised to 1 by 4. So this is basically eta. This is the known as a Kolmogorov length scale. Kolmogorov length scale. This is the smallest scale of turbulence. This is the smallest eddy that will be there in turbulence, which means if you take a region below this length scale less than this, that region will be laminar. That much will be laminar. So below up to this, the eddy will be, there will be turbulence. So it is known as Kolmogorov length scale. Eta equals nu cube by epsilon raised to 1 by 4. Similarly, you can get expressions for Kolmogorov time scale. Actually, you have to do this, okay? Kolmogorov time scale and Kolmogorov velocity scale. This I am not doing. This you do yourself. Just by doing dimensional analysis, you should be able to get an expression for the Kolmogorov time scale and Kolmogorov velocity scale. Okay, so with this, I'm going to stop here today. We have covered some portions. Okay, so this is where I stop today. So we'll meet next Thursday. Okay, 3 o'clock. Is there anything? Is there anything from your side? If there is nothing, yeah. Okay. So this course is actually as advanced as computational fluid dynamics will go. I'll take everything like this is not an introductory course to in computational fluid dynamics or anything. It's a fully detailed, very detailed, and by once you do this, you will be able to do you should be able to do any problem in computational fluid dynamics. Any software you should be able to run any theoretical research. If you want to go for a PhD, you will be able to do. I can assure you that. So it will be a little vague. The subject is like that. The way it's little vague. The second part is a little tough, but it's clear. It will be a clear, like the structures and all that. It will be clear. This is not clear. This part is a little vague. You will have to read. You just read in the internet itself. You can. There are so much material on turbulence modeling, or don't go into turbulence modeling right now. That we'll go into later. Generally about the introduction to turbulence, etc. You can read, or if you want, you take some books. I can give you books. Tenekes and Lumley. There are many. Just take some introduction to turbulence, some textbooks, and you can become familiar with these things. Okay, so shall I log out?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.